Okay, the human rights-based policing. Let's start. Ay, wait lang, screenshot muna pala. At the count of 3, 2, and 1, open your camera. Smile. Kalimutan ko mag-screenshot. Smile. Yan. Bakit 20 lang kayo? Ang konti na lang.
Tulog.
Tulog. Nako, bahala kayo. Di na ako nag-upload ng recording. Okay, the human rights-based policy. So, human rights refers to that what we call basic rights and freedoms that all human beings have. Or parang lahat ng human beings, diba? Ito yung karapatan natin or karapatang pantao. Ito ang ibig sabihin ng human rights. So, rights are inherent to all human beings regardless of nationality, place of residence, sex, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, language, or any other status. Basta tao ka, meron kang karapatan. Okay? We are equally entitled to our human rights without discrimination. So, ang human rights natin dapat pantay-pantay yan. Walang pangit, okay? Wala dahil sa color nila, wala dahil sa ethnic nila. As long as na alam nating tao sila. Okay? These rights are all interrelated, interdependent, and indivisible according to the UNHC, United Nations Higher Commission on Human Rights, or UNCHR, sabi natin. So, according to the Universal Declarations of Human Rights, proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly in December 10, 1948, all human beings are born free and equal, and they are endowed with reasons and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Yan. So, what is human rights-based policing? Okay, human rights-based policing, or HRBP, is the comprehensive, systematic, and institutional compliance with international human rights standards, practices in the conduct of police or law enforcement functions. Itong HRBP, ito po yung international na sinusundan ng bawat lahat. Okay, any country, basta included sa United Nations. Okay? Again, this is parang yung basis natin dun sa pagpapatupad ng batas sa pag-i-implement ng mga law. So, it is also an approach to policing that defines the relationship between individual citizens and various groups or sectors of society as claim holders whose rights have to be respected and protected by the police. So, the police as duty holders have obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights. So, without this human rights-based policing, baka lahat tayo patay na. Baka lahat tayo wala ng karapatan. So, meron tayong sinusundan na human rights the whole world. Lalo na kung meron tayong kasali tayo dun sa United Nations. Ayan. So, meron tayong ganyan. Meron kayong subject na ganyan kapag second year na kayo? Human rights. Next. Ay, second year na kayo ngayon, di ba? Second sem, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Second year, second sem. Inisip ko, yung second year na ba itong mga to? Okay. Second year, second sem. Meron yan. Tinuturo ko yan human rights. Tinuro ko yan last sem sa kabanatuan. Yan. So, HRBP also aims to empower claim holders, diba, to claim their rights, yan, syempre, while strengthening the capacities of duty holders to meet their duties and obligation as human rights protectors. So, meron kasi mga council about human rights. Kaya nga dito sa Philippines, diba, meron tayong CHR, Commission on Human Rights, and minsan, diba, kapag ang policy ng isang bansa, or parang sa tingin nila is overpowered na, or parang nawawakasan na, or parang natatapakan ang karapatan ng pantao ng isang member ng isang country, minsan nakikialam yung UNCHR or the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. Kasi tinitingnan nila yan each country. 'Di ba? Recently lang yung mga decisions ni Duterte is parang pinakikialaman ng mga ibang bansa dahil yan diyan sa mga UNCHR. So the PNP has 3 levels of human rights obligation: to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights. Kailangan pong gawin yan ng mga PNP kasi kung hindi, overpower sila, baka kapag nag-a-arrest sila, lahat na lang nang gagawin nila, kaya susundukin muna or so whatever. So, to respect human rights means refraining from interfering with the enjoyments of people's rights. So, for example, wala namang sa batas nagsabing bawal yung ganito, bakit mo hihintuan or parang babawalan siya sa gantong enjoyment or so what? To protect human rights means to implement laws that provide equal protection to all persons from human rights violation by the state, authorities, or by non-state actors. So, So, to fulfill human rights refer to the act establishing institutions and implementing system, mechanism, or procedures that enable people to claim and enjoy their rights. So, as a reform of initiative, human rights-based policing is a strategic approach, okay, for reorienting the police organization from traditional policing models or theories based purely on social control, repression of new paradigm, okay, anchored or genuine respect for human rights and dignity, transparency, accountability, rule of law, people's active participation in democratic governance. So, ang nangyayari dyan, syempre, nagkakaroon sila ng reorientation about the police organization. Alam nyo ba yung, for example, nagkakandak sila ng simpleng arrest or so what? Yung mga basic human rights, okay? Inire-review sa mga police. Bakit po? Kasi the police, everyday nagdi-deal sila, diba, with the people. So, maaaring nakakalimutan nila yung mga batas sa human rights, lalo na katulad ng mga nakikita natin sa social media, diba? Wherein, sumasama naman daw yung isang tao ng matiwasay dun sa pulis, pero bakit binubugbog niya pa or so what? Diba? So, sometimes, yung mga pulis kasi, nakakalimutan nila yan. So, kaya nagkakaroon sila ng reorientation about the human rights. Kasi minsan, hindi natin masasabi, hindi lahat ng pulis tama sila or tama ang ginagawa nila. Diba may mga pulis yung malalaki yung ulo, or yung naging pulis lang, pero lahat na lang, kala nila overpower nila, lahat na lang sa kalaw nila kasi pulis daw sila. Yan. So, characteristics of human rights-based policing is strict observance of police policies and procedures. So, human rights-based policing entails strict observance of police policies and operational procedures. Most, if not all violation of human rights occur when police officers do not follow established policies and procedures, shortcuts, omissions, or blatant disregards for procedures or regulations and generally accepted social-cultural norms. So, when police officers follow and apply proper procedures, they uphold human rights while doing all that is possible to ensure that subsequent case to the filed in court against suspect would prosper. So, kahit nabugbugin siya, kaya nga, nakita niyo rin yung nag-viral na police na tinabunan ng taho siya ng isang Chinese national ba yun? Or hindi ko alam anong national ng babae yun. Yung sa railway, diba? Parang nainis itong babae sa kanya. Foreign national siya. Tapos, ang ginawa niya, binastos niya yung police. Talagang tinapunan niya ng taho sa muka. Tapos, ang nangyari is, wala. Hindi naman siya ginantihan ng police. Sinampahan lang siya ng kaso. So, hindi siya binugbog or so what. So, ibig sabihin yung police na yon kahit anong gawin sa kanya, parang sinusunod niya pa rin ng human rights. Kasi alam nyo, kapag police kayo, dapat talaga ini-enroll mo or nire-retry mo na ito ang karapatan mo or ito yung gagawin mo. Huwag kang mag-overpower of your authority. Lagi mong gagamitin is just only reasonable force. Diba? Meron tayong tinatawag na reasonable force. Hindi po pwede yung overpower mo dahil police ka or so whatever. Di natin masisi yung iba kasi kahit simple naman sumasama yung mga ibang tao or parang kahit simpleng arrest lang, ginagawan pa nila ng violence, which is wrong. So, adherence to international human rights standards of law enforcement, ayan, yung human rights-based policing na ginagamit din ng mga police is within adherence with the UN, okay po, within the HRBP, adhering to international standards of human rights in law enforcement. There are at least 10, okay? There are at least 10 basic international human rights standards for law enforcement. At yun ay ina-accept or ina-inherit din natin ng mga PNP. So, by adhering to international standards, the PNP is able to comply with the uniform set of principles and practices that is expected from all police officers by the international community. So, ganun ang ginagawa nila. Kaya yung mga PNP, di ba, meron silang mga basic procedures on how to conduct arrest, on how to conduct search and seizure, or so whatever. Kasi po, involved dyan ang human rights. Ang dami pala nito. Ito, dito na lang tayo. Sige. Ito, dito, yan. 10 basic international human rights standards for law enforcement. Number 1, equal protection. Everyone is entitled to equal protection of the law. Okay? Without discrimination on any grounds, especially against violence and other threats. So, be especially vigilant to protect potentially vulnerable groups such as children, okay, the elderly, women, refugees, displaced persons, and members of minority groups. Equal protection, ibig sabihin lahat. Without the race or colors or without the sex or so what, equal protection. Standard number 2, respectful treatment. So, treat all citizens and victims of crime with compassion and respect. So, with utmost consideration for their need for safety and privacy. It must be remembered that under the law, all arrested persons and detainees are still considered innocent and have the right to due process. Diba? Lahat naman ng kapag hinuli pa lang siya ng police, still suspect pa nga lang ang tawag sa kanya, hindi natin siya pwedeng tawagin criminal or convicted. Kasi sino lang magbibigay ng title na yon? Sino nga? Sige nga. Sino yung magbibigay ng title na yon? Na criminal or convict na yung isang tao? Anyone? John Michael Lacson?
Ma'am.
Ano yung magsasabi na convict or criminal na isang tao?
Yung pag ma'am, pag nakulong na po siya. Yung po.
Sino?
Mama ko po. Mama.
Yes, pamintuan.
Yung palagi ko lang po, yung judge po.
Yung judge, ang palagay talaga. Pinag-aralan niyo yan sa Clause 112 nyo, ano ba kayo?
Yun po yung naalala ko, ma'am.
Di ba?
Apo.
Balik kayo
Opo,
sa
ma'am.
CGS, di ba? Si court or si judge lang ang pwedeng magsabi na convict or criminal na isang tao. Kapag nasa pa yan, sa police, suspect lang yan. Kaya nga sabi niya, all arrested persons, detainees are still considered what? Innocent. So, only the court can determine their guilt of innocence. Nandiyan na nga, di ba? Even when they are already convicted by the court, they still have the right to be treated humanely with full respect and dignity. Naku, kaya nga minsan, naisip mo is, siya na nga yung pumatay, pero bakit napakadami pa rin niyang karapatan? Ganyan. Okay? Kasi po, meron tayong meron tayong sinusundan na 10 basic international human rights standards for law enforcement. So, next, use of force. Okay? Do not use force except, kailan lang? When strictly necessary. Kung kinakailangan lang. And to the minimum extent required under the circumstances. Kasi nga po, ang kailangan force lang na gamitin nyo is what? Reasonable force. For example, binabato ka ng suspect ng ng batuta or mismong plywood or anything na wood material lang. Sapat na ba yun para barilin mo siya? Hindi po. Okay? Kasi pinapalo ka lang niya eh. Diba? Dapat hahanap ka ng parehong force lang, nakatumbas lang ng isang ng ganong bagay. Okay, next. Policing or non-violent assemblies. Ayan. Avoid using force when policing unlawful but non-violent assemblies. So, when dispersing violent assemblies, use force only to the minimum extent necessary. Ito yung sinasabi sa inyo. Lalo na sa tokhang, di ba, binabaril nila agad. Minsan, okay, totoo naman yung mga kwento ng iba, di ba, na kahit hindi naman lalaban, binabaril nila. May mga ganun ginagawa yung mga pulis. Hindi ko sinasiraan yung pulis, pero I am just basing my in my own experiences from the other people or parang yung kwento ng iba sa akin. So ganun. Yung iba kasi mga pulis kahit hindi man nanlalaban, binabaril nila. Pero ang sabi nga dito sa human rights, 'di ba? It should be kung hindi naman nanlalaban or 'di ba, or non-violent assemblies naman 'yan. Therefore, dapat yung proper way of arresting. Yun ang ibigay mo sa kanila. So, use of lethal force. Ayan na. Lethal force should not be used except, when strictly unavoidable in order to protect your life or the lives of others. Ito na yung lethal weapon. Ang sinasabi natin dito, yung baril. Hindi mo yan pwedeng gamitin except otherwise, okay? If it endangers your life. Kaya nga sabi ko, di ba, kung pinapukpok ka lang naman yun ng kahoy or so what, hindi karapatan yun or hindi yun pwedeng maging reasonable force if baril ang gagamitin mo. Gagamitin mo pa lang ang baril na yan kapag ikaw mismo tinutukan ka na niya ng baril. Or parang ikaw mismo binabaril ka niya. Therefore, dun ka pa lang pwedeng gumamit ng baril. Pero kung tumatakas lang sa'yo, wala siyang ginagawa, hindi mo siya pwedeng barilin. Intindihan po. Next is arresting persons on legal grounds. So, only arrest persons if there are legal grounds to do so. And the arrest is carried out in accordance with the lawful arrest procedure. Ayan, di ba? Meron tayong mga basic procedures which is yung discuss naman natin last week. So, detainees right. Ayan, may mga detainees right tayo. Ensure that all detainees immediately after their arrest have access to their family and lawyer. Di ba? Meron tayo kasi tayong tinatawag na custodial investigation. Ano ngang RA yon? Anong RA yon? Yung custodial investigation. Oh, anyone?
Ako po, ma'am.
Ano yan?
RA 7438 po.
RA 7438, diba? Dito natin pinag-uusapan yung karapatan ng mga detainee. Bakit? Kasi hindi pa naman siya kriminal yan. At kahit naman criminal or convicted na yan, meron pa rin silang basic human rights kapag sa loob ng kulungan, diba? Dito din, kapag detainee sila, lalo na dyan kapag detainee sila, mas malaki ang karapatan nila. Bakit? Kasi hindi mo pa napapatunayan kung talagang sila ang gumawa ng crime na yun or hindi. So, next is human treatment of detainees. All detainees, again, kapag na-encounter yung word na detainee, hindi pa yan convicted. Detain lang. Diba? Pansamantalang kulong lang. Ito naman yung aso ko ng gugulo. So, nakapasok siya ng sala. Ito na siya. Papabebe. Okay, all detainees must be treated humanely. Under any circumstances, do not inflict, instigate, nor tolerate any act of torture or ill treatment, and refuse to obey any order to do so. Kaya nga, meron silang karapatan na makita sila ng pamilya nila. Also, they have their rights to have their own lawyer of their choice. Then next, refusal to obey unjust orders. Yes, do not carry out, order, or cover up extra legal killings. Ayan, or mga tinatawag nating extrajudicial killings. For example, pulis ka. Tapos yung hepe mo, may utos sa'yo na, sige, patayin nyo na, tirahin nyo na yung mga drug dealer na yun or so what. Meron kang karapatan not to obey that rules. Bakit? Wala naman yun sa sinumpaan mo. Diba? Walang utos sa'yo na pumatay. Okay? Unless mission yan or operation na raid, ganyan, or ng isang prominent na, criminal. Do not carry out, order, or cover up extra legal killings or enforce disappearance and refuse to obey any order to do so. May karapatan kang umobey. Pero ang nangyayari kasi, syempre, yung mga pulis nun, hindi sila tatanggi. Bakit po? Sa tingin nyo, bakit? Bakit yung mga pulis, talagang gagawin pa rin yung mga extrajudicial killings na yan, or EGK na tinatawag natin? Bakit?
Baka po takot mawalan ng trabaho, ma'am.
Yes, that is one. Bakit po? Kasi pag lumaban ka, okay, lalo na sa mga ganyang organization, hindi ko sinisiraan ng mga pulis, pero parang sinasabi ko lang yung mga ibang dahilan kung bakit yung pulis ginagawa yung mga ganyan. Minsan, kahit ayaw naman nila, okay, pero dahil involved sila dun sa isang institution na yon, ang nangyayari, go with the flow na lang sila. Kasi ang mangyayari, kung hindi nila papatayin yung inuutos nila, or parang hindi susundin yung inuutos nila, ang nangyayari nun, magkakaroon ng discrimination. Hindi siya tatanggapin sa organization, or sometimes, siya pa ang titirahin. Baka siya na ang patayin. Hindi lang siya mawawalan ng trabaho na. Siya pa mismo ang papatayin. Hindi maiwasan sa mga organization na ganyan. Sa BFP, PNP, BGMP, sa lahat. Merong mga ganyan. Still may mga corrupt. Hindi ko sinasabing lahat. Okay? Still may mga corrupt pong ganyan. And I know some. Kasi talagang kinukwento. Talagang minsan daw, ayaw din man nilang tanggapin yung ganun. Kahit hindi naman, may mga corruption pa din Minsan, yung kahit straight ka, sabi niya, mapapa-oo ka na lang Kasi, iniisip mo yung buhay mo Kasi iniisip mo yun din yung trabaho mo So, kahit ayaw mo yung ginagawa nila, minsan mapapa-oo ka na lang. Go with the flow, sabi nga nila. Lalo na kung lowest mammal ka pa lang, yung sumusunod ka pa lang sa kanila. Ganun siya. So, we cannot blame yung mga, ang kawawa dito, alam mo sino? Yung mga inuutusan. Kasi yung mga matataas na tao nun, syempre, kaya nilang protektahan sarili nila Yung mga inuutusan, yung mga talagang walang no choice. Okay? So, I'm just telling you this kasi one day, magiging part din kayo ng mga law enforcement agencies and may mga ganyang scenarios. Okay po? Next, and syempre, last one, ito. standard reporting of violations. So, report all violations of these standards to your senior officer and to the nearest prosecution office. Do everything within your ability and authority to ensure steps are taken to investigate violations of these standards. So, yung iba nagre-report, yung iba hindi. Okay po. Search and seizure, alam niyo naman to. Ito na. Itong custodial investigation na to, ayan. Sige, lagay ko muna to. Bukas na to, kasi para bukas to. Kaya ganun lang. Okay po? So, that ends our discussion for today. Kasi bukas naman, ito, yan, part 2. Yan, RA 7438. So, do you have any questions? Please open your camera. Hello? Do you have any questions?
Yan, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, may tanong ako, ma'am.
Yes, ano yan na?
Kasi po, ma'am, may kagabi po, nung last night po kasi ng tito ko. So, may dumating po sundalo. Alam naman po namin na maraming tao, tapos, nawalan po ng parang
Social distancing.
Opo, yun po. Yun po, pinagbibintangan po nila kami ng nagsusugal po dun sa likod, pero kumakain lang po kami. Magkakamag-anak naman po kami na kumakain. Tapos parang sinisingil po yata ng 15K, gano'n.
What?
Opo. Tapos di po pong may dentista ko.
No, huwag kayo pabayad.
Galit na po, galit po sila eh.
Evidence muna ka mo. So, evidence
Kaya
na yung nagkaganon kayo.
Galit
Anong
na galit.
unit yan? Anong unit yung mga yan? Sundalo talaga sila?
Mga opo,
Wait lang,
sila.